to the deep dive. You guys, you really wanted us to take a look at this Nick Rekieta arrest. It's wild.
Yeah, it's something else, that's for sure.
I mean, this guy, the lawyer, the YouTuber, Nick Rekieta.
Outspoken. Very outspoken legal commentary, usually.
Yeah, and now he's the one on the other side of the law.
Makes you think, doesn't it?
It really does. So for this deep dive, you know, the usual articles, Reddit threads.
Oh, and some choice clips from Law and Crime Network. Those guys are great.
Yeah, they really break things down. So to get started, I mean, this all blew up on May 24th of 2024.
FOX9 out of Atlanta, they were the first to report it. Rekieta and his wife Kayla arrested.
In Spicer, Minnesota.
Out of all places.
Right. So the charges, though, I mean, that's where it gets really interesting. Because online, Rekieta, you know, he's this conservative family man, lawyer.
Yeah, but these charges.
A whole other picture.
Second-degree drug possession. Cocaine and ketamine, allegedly.
It doesn't stop there. Child endangerment, too, because his kids were supposedly there during all this.
Allegedly, of course.
Allegedly, yes. And to top it all off, firearms charges.
Because if he's using drugs, he'd be a prohibited person in the eyes of the law. Can't own guns.
So this prohibited person thing, can you explain that a little more? I feel like that's important.
Absolutely. So it's basically a legal classification that stops certain people from owning guns. Felons, drug users, that sort of thing. It's all about public safety.
So basically, Rekieta went from this online legal commentator to facing some serious time.
Up to 25 years, potentially, plus the fines.
Yeah, this is heavy stuff, but how did it all even start?
A concerned citizen tipped off the police, alleged child neglect and drug use at Rekieta's home.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack. But you said citizen, right? Like any random person.
Well, the reports are saying it was members of his own church. Apparently, they had noticed some changes in his behavior.
That's wild. So like his online persona was one thing, but in person, people were noticing something was off.
Yeah, and it gets even more interesting. The detective on the case, he actually watched Rekieta's online videos as part of the investigation.
Hold on. So the detective is going down the YouTube rabbit hole.
That's right. Apparently, he saw, or at least thought he saw, signs of weight loss, maybe drug use, and just increasingly erratic behavior.
Talk about blurring the lines between online and offline. And this all led to the search warrant.
Exactly. They went to Rekieta's home, but it wasn't a simple knock and talk.
What happened?
Reports say they had to force their way in. Rekieta didn't want to let them in at first.
Oh, wow. So they get in and they find
drugs, paraphernalia, and firearms.
Yeah.
And apparently Rekieta confirmed that he and his wife used the master bedroom where most of this stuff was found.
So they have this official investigation going on, and then, well, there's the internet.
Oh yeah, the internet always has something to say.
There's this Reddit thread. What's going on with Nick Rekieta getting arrested? People are going crazy.
And it's fascinating because you see this completely different perspective on Rekieta compared to what he's showing publicly.
It's like, was this a side of him he was hiding, or did something change?
Yeah, a lot of the comments describe him as becoming unhinged, erratic. Just concerning behavior online.
Do you think this is just a change in his content strategy, or is it something deeper?
I don't know, but there are some specific examples mentioned in the thread. Mocking a suicidal fan, inappropriate jokes, racial slurs, personal attacks. It's intense.
Wow, I didn't realize it was that bad.
And on top of all that, there's a lawsuit against him for defamation.
Oh, wow, I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, some people on Reddit think that this lawsuit might have been contributing to this whole downward spiral.
It's a lot to process, right? Like, who is the real Nick Rekieta? What's the truth?
And that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Yeah. How much of what we see online is real, especially with these public figures?
All right, well, let's move on from the online speculation and talk about his first court appearance.
Oh, yeah, that was interesting. He decided to represent himself and his wife.
Not surprising, given he's a lawyer, right?
Yeah, but things didn't exactly go smoothly. Someone on Zoom interrupted the whole thing.
I saw that. Total chaos. This case is just attracting so much attention.
It really is. It just shows you how technology is changing everything, even legal proceedings.
So what happened after the interruption? Did the hearing continue?
Yeah, they got back on track. The judge set bail and addressed Rekieta's request for a new judge.
Which is a pretty common move in high-profile cases, right? Trying to avoid any bias.
Exactly. So now Rekieta's out on bail, facing these serious charges. I think it's time to break down the legal side of things.
Let's do it.
This Law and Crime Network video does a great job explaining a key concept here.
Hit me with it.
Constructive possession.
Okay. In English, please.
Basically, you can get in trouble for having illegal stuff, even if it's not like on your person directly, like if it's in your house.
So even if Rekieta claims those drugs weren't his because they were in his home, he's still screwed.
It's possible. The prosecution will argue he knew about the drugs and had control over that space. That's often enough to prove constructive possession.
Makes sense. But wouldn't Rekieta, being a lawyer himself, have some advantage here?
Oh, absolutely. There are a few ways he could fight this. He could say the search warrant wasn't valid or blame it on his house guests. He could even just deny using drugs at all.
So basically, a whole legal battle is brewing.
Oh, for sure. And those online videos we talked about earlier, those could become a factor too.
You mean the ones where he was acting, not himself? How could those be used in court?
Well, the prosecution might try to use them to paint a picture of a pattern of behavior, maybe strengthen their case. Plus, any witnesses, especially people close to Rekieta, their testimony could be huge.
This case just keeps getting more complicated.
Definitely. There's so many moving parts,
Yeah.
and the legal proceedings are really just getting started. Who knows what will happen?
We're definitely going to have to wait and see. But this is just the beginning of our deep dive. When we come back, we'll talk about the potential fallout from all this.
The impact on Rekieta's career, how this affects other online creators, we'll cover it all.
So stay tuned for part 2, where we'll dive even deeper into the consequences of this case and what it means for the world of online personalities.
Okay, so we've got the charges, the evidence, the public going nuts, online and offline.
Yeah, wild ride so far. But where does all this leave Rekieta? Like, what happens now?
Well, his future is definitely up in the air. Big time. Especially his career.
Right, because he built everything around being a lawyer, right? Giving legal advice online, representing clients.
Exactly. But these charges, even if he doesn't get convicted, they're going to follow him.
Yeah, the legal field is all about ethics, integrity.
And these charges raise some serious questions about his judgment. Can people trust him to uphold those standards?
And it's not just public perception either, right?
Nope. The Minnesota Bar Association could come knocking.
Oh, right. They have to make sure lawyers are, behaving themselves.
Exactly. And with this case being so high profile, they might want to make an example out of him.
You think they'd actually disbar him?
It's not guaranteed, but it's on the table. They'll look at the evidence, his actions, the whole 9 yards.
So yeah, his legal career is in serious jeopardy. But let's not forget, this guy has a huge following online.
Right. Almost 500,000 on YouTube, another 150,000 on Twitter.
And that's where this case goes beyond just Rekieta, right? It's about the whole world of online influencers, content creators.
Absolutely. It raises some big questions about responsibility, being genuine, what happens when your online self and your real self don't match up.
This whole thing is a bit of a wake-up call, isn't it?
Kind of feels that way. You build this image online, you get a following, but then real life comes crashing in.
And what happens then? Like, what does it all mean?
I think it's a reminder that online creators, especially those with a lot of influence, they got to be careful.
Because what they do in their personal lives can affect their whole brand.
Yeah, their reputation, their audience, it's all connected.
We've seen this with celebrities before, but this feels different somehow.
It's because Rekieta presented himself as an authority figure, a legal expert.
So the stakes are higher.
Definitely. It adds a whole other layer to this whole mess. It's like that saying, with great power comes great responsibility.
Right. The more influence you have, the more accountable you are for your actions.
Exactly. And when that influence is based on a certain image, any cracks in that image are going to be magnified.
Makes you wonder how many other online personas are one bad decision away from a similar situation.
It's a scary thought. It's a reminder that the internet, even though it feels like anything goes, there are still consequences.
And those consequences can be even worse online, right? Because everything spreads so fast.
Oh yeah, your reputation can be ruined in a matter of minutes.
So where does this leave Rekieta now? He's out on bail, he's got these charges hanging over him, his career's in limbo. What's the next step?
It all comes down to the legal process now. It's going to be a long, complicated road.
And there's another thing we haven't talked about. His family.
Right. His wife is facing charges too. And they have kids.
It's easy to get lost in the drama, the legal stuff, the online chatter. But at the end of the day, this is about real people.
Absolutely. This case is about more than just the law. It's about a family going through a really public, really tough time.
And behind all the online personas, there are real human beings with real lives.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
So we've covered the charges, the evidence, what it means for Rekieta's career, how it affects the world of online influencers. But there's one question that's still bugging me.
Yeah, what's that?
Did Rekieta's online persona actually lead to his downfall?
I was just thinking the same thing. Like, did the pressure of keeping up that image, always having to create content, the blurring of his personal and professional life, did that all play a role in what happened?
It's a tough question. It's hard to say for sure, but it's something we need to consider.
So in our final part, we're going to tackle that.
The role of these online platforms, the pressure cooker of content creation, and the warning signs that maybe a digital persona is going off the rails.
Okay, so we're back for the final part of this Nick Rekieta deep dive. We've gone through the charges, the evidence, the whole impact on his life and career. It's a lot.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride.
And, throughout all this, there's this one question that just keeps coming back to me.
Oh, yeah.
Like, did Rekieta's online persona, did that actually contribute to his downfall?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Because he built this whole image online, cultivated it, and it attracted a massive audience.
Right, and as we saw in the previous parts, that image seems to completely clash with what he's being accused of.
So how do we even begin to understand this connection between what happens online and what happens in real life?
Well, I think the first step is recognizing how much power these online platforms have.
Oh, totally. I mean, we connect with people online, get our news, build communities, even build careers.
It's like a whole other world with its own rules and its own way of doing things.
Yeah.
And while those platforms can be amazing, they also come with their own unique pressures.
Oh, absolutely.
Like what kind of pressures?
Well, you've got this constant pressure to be creating content, engaging with your followers, staying relevant.
Yeah, and it can be really intense, especially for people who depend on their online presence for their income.
It's like a 247 job. The internet never sleeps. There's always someone posting something, commenting, sharing.
And that constant need for attention, I imagine that takes a toll.
Oh, yeah. Big time. It can lead to burnout, anxiety. You can even start to lose touch with reality.
So are you saying these online platforms are bad, like we should all just log off?
No, not at all. It's more about understanding the potential downsides and being careful.
Okay, so how does all of this relate to Rekieta?
Well, it's possible that the pressure of maintaining that online persona, the constant need to create content, all that, maybe it blurred the lines between his public image and his private life.
Right, like we saw in that Reddit thread, people were describing this change in his behavior online, like he was becoming someone else.
Exactly. Maybe he lost track of who he was offline versus who he was pretending to be online.
And that disconnect can be dangerous, right?
Oh, incredibly. It can give you a false sense of invincibility. Like the rules don't apply to you, your actions don't have real-world consequences.
And that kind of thinking can lead people to make some really bad choices.
Exactly.
So if you're seeing someone online who seems to be going down that path, are there any warning signs?
Definitely. Big change in behavior, being impulsive, not caring about the consequences, and losing touch with reality. Those are all big red flags.
So if we see those things, it's a sign that maybe someone needs help.
It's a sign that something's not right. It's important to remember that behind every online persona, there's a real person. And sometimes those people are hurting.
So what can we do? How do we make sure we're using these platforms in a healthy way and protect ourselves from these potential pitfalls?
Awareness is key. We need to recognize the pressures that come with being online.
Makes sense.
Setting boundaries, prioritizing your mental health, getting support when you need it, those are all super important.
It sounds like we need to approach the whole online world with a bit of skepticism and a lot of self-awareness.
Absolutely. And we also need to hold creators accountable for their actions, encourage a culture of responsibility online.
And maybe most importantly, remember that online connections aren't the same as real-life relationships. We still need those face-to-face interactions and support systems.
Couldn't agree more.
So this deep dive into Nick Rekieta, it's a stark reminder that the online world and the real world are completely intertwined.
Yeah, they affect each other.
What we do online has real-world consequences, sometimes big ones. And we may not have all the answers, but I think this has been a really valuable conversation.
I think so too.
We've talked about the legal stuff, the ethical stuff, the human impact. It's complex.
And there are a lot of layers to it.
But it's also about online personas, responsibility, and how our relationship with the digital world is always changing.
It's definitely a cautionary tale, but it's also a chance for us to learn and grow.
If we can be more mindful and responsible online, maybe we can create a healthier digital space for everyone.
I like that.
And that's a message worth spreading. So to everyone listening, be mindful, be responsible, and most importantly, be kind to each other.
Yeah.
This is where we wrap up our deep dive into the Nick Rekieta case. Thanks for joining us. And remember, the online world is constantly changing, so stay informed, stay engaged, and keep asking questions. We'll see you next time, and until then, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.